that full of doubt look and slap on a happy grin, and you'll spread sunshine all over the place. Put on a happy face. Really?
Probably nowadays there might be one or two people who only know him as the game show host, but really he had the most tremendous career and contributed an awful lot to show business.
Wouldn't you agree that all comedy is, I'm talking about in its quintessence, all comedy is basically intellectual?
He had this enormous energy, and he just loved working an audience. He loved the idea of making people laugh, and he was very, very good at it.
Every time I tried to nibble your ear hole, I found myself with a mouthful of nougat.
Don't worry, Reggie, darling. It will be all right. It will be all right once we're married.
With a voice like that, you're joking.
The word that keeps coming back to me again and again is enthusiasm. You knew if you met Leslie Crowther that you were going to smile at some stage, well within the first 10 seconds.
Spanish is not nearly so cheerful normally, you know.
Good evening. I knew and worked with Leslie Crowther for more than 30 years. Our real friendship began in 1970 when I produced the Leslie Crowther Show for London Weekend Television. I also produced the series of My Good Woman, Leslie starring with Sylvia Sims and Richard Wilson, that was #1 in the ratings, and later I sent him out exactly 100 times to invite nearly 1,000 contestants on The Price is Right to come on down. But I first came across him at the BBC in the early 1960s on the Billy Cotton Band Show and the Black and White Minstrel Show, when I was a young assistant floor manager and Leslie was a new talent about to make the big time.
All right, Alf.
Righto, Bob.
A little nursery rhyme for the sons of millionaires.
A little boy kneels at the foot of his cot. His daddy was loaded and left him the lot. Hush, hush, whisper who dare. Christopher Robin is counting his shares.
So you know Smith?
No.
Oh, Edie, yes you do. You really do. That shop in the high street that you and me and Bert went into for some iced lollies, and Bert said to the assistant, "Is your ice cream pure?" And the assistant said, "As pure as the girl of your dreams." And Bert said, "Oh, blimey, I'll have a packet of fags then."
Leslie was the great British all-rounder. Straight actor, situation comedy star, children's entertainer, game show host, and after-dinner speaker. He was also a tireless worker for charity. He was a loving husband, father of 5, and grandfather of 12. But there was no public image and separate private person to Leslie. They were one and the same person. Leslie was born in Nottingham in 1933 into a theatrical family. Throughout his childhood, there was little doubt that his future lay in entertainment. And at the age of 11, he won a piano scholarship to the Royal Academy of Music. He could have pursued a career in classical music, but chose the stage instead. He later said he'd rather finish a performance to the sound of laughter than the polite applause he might get for a Chopin nocturne. After drama school, where he met his future wife Jean, Leslie appeared in Shakespeare, Revue, pantomime, and Seaside Concert Party, honing his musical and comedy skills. Leslie and Jean later worked together in the popular Ovaltine's radio programme. It was a tough but invaluable apprenticeship that was to put him on the road to early television and radio success.
Yes, remember Alice Bluegown?
Yes?
Well, I didn't write it, but I did some of the pleating.
Oh, dear.
Dear. You know, I admire the people who do write.
Yeah, except the one who wrote that joke.
Well, I first met and worked with Leslie in 1962 when Leslie and Ronnie Barker and myself provided the sketches in a radio show called Variety Playhouse. And from that, Leslie was given his own radio show called CROWTHER'S Crowd, and Ronnie and I went with him. Like Ronnie, he had this amazing capacity for any accent he could do.
Ah non, c'est moi qui parle, hein, c'est moi qui parle. What the
And his characterizations were always so accurate and very, very funny.
I took all my prescriptions to the doctor and he had to give me sedatives and surgetives and bars of chocolate laxative, pills to make you sleepy and there's pills to keep you wide awake. There's aspirins for headaches and there's powders for the stomachache. There's 6 new pairs of spectacles which I got with reductions and a hypodermic syringe with a book full of instructions. If ever I need earplugs, well, I'm sure there must be some about. And surgical appliances that I shall just keep mum about. I've got a steel corset to fit underneath me undies and a dozen pairs of gnashers and a special pair for Sundays. I think I have the answer to each pain or inflammation, so it's fiddle to the British Medical Association. oh, where's my tranquilizers? Gotta count the beat till I get one on the jaw, then I gotta beat the count cause I'm lying on the floor. I get up at 3 cause I can't count to 4. I'm the boxer with the beat.
You train a lot on your own?
Oh yeah.
Do you do any training at home?
Oh yeah.
Well, doesn't the wife ever moan?
Yeah. Every morning when I wake, you see, I punch the bag as hard as can be.
I see. What happens then?
She gets up and makes the tea. I'm the boxer with the beat. Bravo! Bravo! Encore! Oh, lovely, lovely, lovely. What a lovely singer. That was John Bolter, you know. Yeah. I wonder who's on next. Oh, it's Leslie Crowther. I wonder what's on the other side.
Leslie could do anything, you know, sing, dance, play the piano, tell jokes.
Here's a funny thing, lady. Now, here is a funny thing. I got home at 3 this morning, found the wife crying her eyes out. I said, what's up? She said, well, since you've been out, we've had a burglar. I said, did he get anything? She said, yeah, I thought it was you. Yes, I always had a great big smile and rosy red cheeks. It was the short trousers that did it. You know my secret? I dye my hair. That is a fact. But the problem is I always forget to dye the hair on my chest. It's like steel wool here. She's going already. I tell you, no. The problem is, you see, that with my skinny legs and that, when I take my clothes off, control yourself, madam. When I take my clothes off, from there downwards, I look like a Brillo pad on stilts.
He could hold an audience on his own, which is quite an achievement. He was so versatile.
Look at my Louise in her tatty chemise, down on her knees, scrubbing floors, if you please. Once or three gay, now how you say, a scrubber. So I became an actor. I can feel it all coming on. Now is the winter green of my discontent. What a
Two catchphrases will always be synonymous with the name of Leslie Crowther. Come on down was to be his call of the 1980s, but throughout the 1960s, it was...
And of course, the nitwit himself, Leslie Crowther. Leslie Crowther. Where is Leslie? Anyone seen Leslie?
on the technical runs, right, before the live show, we used to get rid of all the traumas about doing material that had to be shaped quite rightly for children by pepping up the technical run with material that would not be acceptable for children or anybody else.
Gaze on that nose and underneath.
Her evening gloves are white.
She has 2 rows of pearly teeth.
She takes them out at night.
But this, I can't use the words, obviously, because I can't. But I actually went out and said something like, on this technical run, it's from ID. It's 5 to 5, and it's CRACKERJACK. And Tom Sloan, the director of Light Entertainment, was in the audience, and he said, "Thank you very much. I've just brought 50 girl guides to watch the show."
I think it's time we went, don't you?
Yes, come on.
Leslie's natural rapport with children made him a natural for Crackerjack.
I conquered Sicily. I conquered France. I conquered Egypt.
And then?
He ran out of conkers.
Noisy and slightly anarchic, it was probably the first unstuffy, unpatronising children's programme on television.
Machen wir hier mit der Schlepphützenklausen von der platzierten heißen Holz in Atlantica Heere und der Verrückten Fuchen Silkernhausen.
Yeah! I should think so and all.
One of the highlights of Leslie's 8-year association with Crackerjack was a visit from the Queen, who told Leslie that she regularly watched with Prince Charles and Princess Anne. And when in the middle 1960s Eamon left the series for ITV, the BBC didn't have to look far for his successor.
You were doing the black and white minstrel show at the same time, so you do this show live and then go across to Victoria Palace and do a live stage performance of...
That was incredible. We used to finish the live show here at... we used to finish the live show here and then dash into a taxi, fight your way through to the Victoria Palace and change into the opening costume at the Victoria Palace and go on stage just in time to walk on with Margot Henderson and George Chisholm in the black and white minstrel show there. Incredible.
You were a young and fit man then, weren't you?
I was. It ruined me. I mean, look at me now.
They're coming to take you away.
I know something, you know.
There's no other bint I would wait for. This bint I would break any date for. We don't have to ask her what she's late for.
Fritz und einer kleiner Nachtmus.
She's absolutely wunderbar and beautiful and public bar and anyone can understand why. We are leaning on the lamppost at the corner of the Straße, case of certain little Fräulein passing by.
Leslie left Crackerjack in 1968, by which time he was established as a prime-time entertainer on television. And in 1970, London Weekend gave him, and me, the Leslie Crowther Show.
Hey, it's Lulu. I thought you were supposed to come on later.
Oh, but listen, something I'd like to tell you.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like that.
What, you mean the singing?
I didn't like that either, but...
Well, that's nice.
I don't know if I like the way you told that Scottish joke. You know, you comedians are all the same. Bob Hope, Jack Benny, you, all the same.
Suddenly I feel better.
Tell all these jokes.
One of my firm memories of Leslie was his enormous professional generosity. There was an example of it on that series. A very nervous Larry Grayson was making his first ever television appearance and overran his allocated 6 minutes to a hilarious 11 minutes. It was all there. The bentwood chair, his friend Everard, Slack Alice, and Shut That Door. I suggested to Leslie that we cut one short sketch of his and keep 9 minutes of Larry Grayson. Leslie asked to see Larry's piece and immediately said, "Take the long sketch out, we can do that next week, and leave Larry's spot intact." And that one performance was to launch Larry Grayson's television career.
She was no lady, that was my wife. Hey! How about that? You see what I mean, Leslie? If you know how, it's so easy. And when you see Bob Hope, tell him as well.
Oh, Clive, you really excelled yourself. You made an apple turnover.
Well, actually, I made it do a double somersault.
Twice in his television career, Coronation Street had to take second place in the ratings to Leslie Crowther, and the first time was with My Good Woman.
Sorry about that. Ta-ra!
Leslie played a hapless husband whose wife, deliciously played by Sylvia Sims, was a compulsive charity worker and do-gooder.
Oh, well. Oh, since we're being clear and giving and taking and all that, you'll be sorry to learn that I haven't made the gravy.
Oh, none of us are perfect.
Oh, and their local vicar was played by one Richard Wilson.
Now, before we go on to the roadway, are you fully conversant with the controls?
Oh, yes, I think so. This is what we use to go round corners with. This thing here is the thing that makes that grating noise.
The gurney.
Thank you.
It was my first sitcom. I didn't have very much knowledge about television, really, and Leslie was just a great sort of leading man to work under, because he is an enormously generous man.
Could you tell me what function those three pedals actually perform?
Well, I know the little one on the right is what you press to go faster with. The one in the middle slows you down. I'm still not quite sure what the one on the left is.
There are a lot of sort of comic actors who come from the sort of stand-up side. You might get a little bit tetchy if he thought that some of the supporting cast were getting good laughs, but that didn't bother Leslie. He was, if that helped the show, then that was fine. He was very generous in that sense as well.
You inspire such confidence, Mr. Gibbons. It's absolutely oozing out of you.
Yes, I can feel it leaving me.
From the middle of the 1970s, Leslie had a time he called his doldrum years. My Good Woman had finished, and though he was going strong with his famous stalk margarine commercials, several series failed to come anywhere near the success he'd been used to. And he was facing the problem that he was to struggle with for years. He's drinking.
I mean, there was terribly unfortunate publicity about it. When he'd only just started to actually go in for a sort of a drying out session, and they all appeared in all the tabloids, and it wasn't very pleasant. And then he had to come out and go into pantomime and face the public, knowing that this rather unpleasant story had been published about him. And I know it hurt him very much, upset him very much. But he had the enormous strength of, and courage, and he went back as soon as he'd finished his pantomime, and he completed the drying out process. And that was it, as far as he was concerned.
I think once he had approached his problem and faced up to it, he was very honest about it, as you say. He showed great courage in the interviews that he gave immediately after it came out in the press. And once he had been through the counselling at Clouds, he lived the rest of his life a much, much happier man.
Oddly enough, though it caused him and his family great distress, it never seemed to affect his work. Whatever he was doing, he'd arrive on time, always wearing a tie and jacket. I can't remember ever seeing him at work in an open-necked shirt and sweater, well prepared, knowing his lines or whatever else was required. The Times crossword nearly complete. And he would deliver exactly what he had been engaged to deliver. In 1980, he got a call from John Scofield at ATV, who'd seen a clip of him doing an impression of Chesney Allen.
Toodaloo-ma-loo-ma, toodaloo-ma-loo-ma, toodle-oi-oi. Any umbrellas to fix today. I'll ready a parasol.
And John asked Leslie if he'd like to repeat it with Bernie Winters as Bud Flanagan.
I'll repair them all with what you call a thingamajig. Pitter-patter, patter, pitter-patter, patter, here comes the rain. Let it pitter-patter, let it pitter-patter, don't mind the rain. I'll mend your umbrellas and go on my way, singing toodaloo-ma-loo-ma, toodaloo, toodaloo-ma-loo-ma, toodaloo. Any umbrellas to mend.
I think that Button Ches was one of the best pieces of work Leslie ever did.
Umbrellas to mend. Like your umbrella, like umbrella.
And then came this.
Here's television's new exciting family game show, The Price is Right! And here's your host, Leslie Crowther!
The Price is Right crashed into the homes of an unsuspecting nation in 1984. And 3 weeks later, Coronation Street was number 2 in the ratings again. The press hated it, the public loved it. And Leslie's invitation to come on down found its way into the language.
Wendy Partridge, come on down!
I'll tell you a funny thing about that catchphrase. Leslie didn't want to do the come on down bit. He thought it was too American and not for him. On the American show, that was the job of an announcer, and it made the announcer a star. But I insisted. Then Leslie pulled what he thought was his ace card. I'll ask Jean about it, he said. I said jokingly, Leslie, I'm your producer. Jean's only your wife. He said, no, she's my wife. You're only my producer. Anyway, he did it my way. Or was it Jean's way?
Aaron Jones! Come on down!
You see, Leslie was in a different class, really. I mean, I used just to watch him. And I know that what he did was he took a deep breath and he just went for it.
Fiona Day, come on down!
You see, nobody would ever feel threatened by Les. Please goodness, they don't feel threatened by me when I'm doing my quiz program. But you couldn't feel uncomfortable. He made everybody feel happy. There was a lovely warm feeling from him.
Now, if in your bonus spin you actually land on... You're all right. You land on the 100... Underneath the arm. If you land on the 100 again, then you get a bonus of £1,000, making £1,500. So, spin the wheel. Spin that wheel, Norma. What's going to happen?
I remember when I started to do Going for Gold first, I was asking him one day, I think we were on a train, funny enough, going up to Manchester to do a program together. I said, give us a tip. And he said, there's, you know, your eyes tell you when you're saying, and now, where are you from, Jean? And how many children have you? Have marvellous, marvellous. Where'd you go on holiday? Spain, Spain, terrific. Now, Jean, I've got to ask you questions. Suddenly change. I nicked it from him and like to think that I can do, at best, a poor pastiche.
Domestic engineer. How dare you pull a stroke like that? I had visions of all sorts of exciting jobs. Well, I suppose being a housewife is exciting. It's fraught anyway. Now then, Myra, we're going to give you the opportunity to win one of 6 prizes.
But The Price is Right wasn't handed to Leslie on a plate.
I had to audition fairly recently for The Price is Right. In fact, Joe Brown and I, as close as 2 years ago, actually had to audition. We both did pilot shows, and I narrowly won.
So Leslie auditioned. And the rest, as they say, is television history.
The programme has had its critics, hasn't it? I mean, not to say it's vituperation.
Had its critics?
Yeah.
Critics, they queued up to slag us off.
Yeah.
When it first burst upon an amazed public in 1984, 3 years ago now, good heavens, a guy called James Murray in the Daily Express referred to me in print as a glob of alien stinkweed. Well, you try reading that over your cornflakes, I'll tell you.
One of the fun things about Leslie was his willingness to send himself up.
So, now we reach the climax of tonight's show, the love trial. Sharon, Lorraine, Greg, and Barry, you nervous? Well, don't be. We're just here to have a bit of fun.
I'm not. I'm here to find true love and happiness.
Right.
Here's his attempt at an impersonation of, well, you judge.
I had a terrible childhood myself. My father worked down the mines, which wasn't easy when you're a hat manufacturer. Life was very difficult for me because, you see, both my parents were members of the Communist Party. Me mum had never let me join the Scouts or the Boys' Brigade because they are neo-imperialist fascist cadre groups.
When he came to shoot it, he actually said, like, if I'd turned you down, who would you have been on the phone to? Like Nicholas Parsons. I mean, I actually genuinely said no, because there was actually something just right about Leslie Crowther. He just seemed like a really nice bloke, you know. Which is actually, you know, it's not a business that really, you know, promotes being nice, really.
I was in the Merseyside branch of the 9th Gorky Rifles.
We apologise for the absence of ALEXEI sale in this week's edition of ALEXEI Sale's Stuff. We're attempting to right the problem, but in the meantime, the programme will continue in Leslie Crowther only.
But I remember the bestest thing about my childhood was the Saturday afternoon drives to Stalingrad.
As you get older, you become more closed off, and I suppose in show business that's even more so, really, because you don't like the threat from younger performers. But he seemed very open.
Ladies and gentlemen, Leslie Crowther.
In 1984, Leslie had to audition for The Price is Right, but in 1990, when Granada launched Stars in Their Eyes, the name at the top of their list as host-presenter was Leslie Crowther.
First of all, will you meet and greet and give a very warm welcome to our very first star guest. Tonight, singing live, Kelly Hampson is Kylie Minogue, John Lennon, Shirley Bassey, Roger Whittaker, Frank Sinatra. Well, that's all for this series of Stars in Their Eyes, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a wonderful 6 weeks, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. We'll no doubt be back again next year.
With Leslie's career now again in orbit came the horrendous motorcar accident that effectively ended his stage and television career. He only once asked, "Why me?" and answered his own question with, "Why not me?" He then decided to get on with his life.
You know, after his accident, there must have been some very tough times, and I think that the fact that he recovered as well as he did was due in no small way to the loving care that he got from Jean and his family.
One morning, when you were writing the last chapter, you said to me, "How do I write about despair?" Which is quite a question. And I thought, and then I said, well, what's the opposite?
And what's the spelling?
There did, however, come a time when he realised that he would not be able to deliver to his own demanding high standards, and he made the conscious decision to retire from performing.
Jealous.
What, really?
Yeah.
You feel you've done everything that you want to do in your career?
No, I don't. I don't feel I've done everything I want to do. I feel I've done everything I want to do well.
He published a funny and moving autobiography and was planning a compilation of the hundreds of pieces he'd written on cricket over the years.
There was I in the pavilion, awaiting my turn to bat. A wicket fell, my turn arrived. I strode onto the hallowed turf, immaculate in whites. There I beheld Gregory, their demon bowler, marking off an incredibly long run. He came tearing down, delivered the ball. It was an outswinger. It pitched wide and swung even wider. I rocked back on my heels, and I had a slash outside the off stump.
His great passion was cricket. He was not all that great a cricketer, but a tremendously keen cricketer, a fantastic watcher of cricket. Actually bought a flat so that he could watch cricket from Lord's.
Dearie me, the ball has struck Keldrief right in the middle of his arabesque.
I'm wearing the Lord's Taverners tie in tribute to him because he was one of the best presidents the Lord's Taverners have ever had. And unfortunately, his accident occurred in the last 3 months of his presidency here, and he might well have gone on for another year, I don't know, after that. He worked tirelessly for the Taverners, but he worked tirelessly for any charity which he was connected, but particularly the Taverners.
What's your name?
Darren.
Darren. How old are you, Darren?
5.
5. And you're one of the walking wounded. You're paying us a visit from another ward, aren't you? Is that right? Is that right?
Get off.
Get off. Let's look at you. Go on. That's lovely. What's your name again?
Kelly.
Kelly. How old are you, Kelly?
12.
You're 12. Are you in here for a long time, or
Just till tomorrow.
Just till tomorrow? Oh, that's great. So you'll be home in time for Christmas?
We're getting a bit of heckling from over there, but don't let it worry you. We'll call on him later. He's got both fingers up his nose. Wave when you get to the bridge, won't you?
He continued to lend his name to the charity work which had been a major part of his life.
You're a good lad. How old are you?
9.
Serves you right.
In 1993, he went to Buckingham Palace to receive the CBE in recognition of that work. Leslie was a very easy and uncomplicated person to work with and to be friends with. He was generous and understanding of other people's shortcomings. He hardly had a bad word to say about anyone, and if a strong case could be found for putting someone down, he'd find the single redeeming thing to be said in their defence. One of the things his children remember about him is that not only was he non-judgmental himself, but he taught them to be so. The colour in Leslie's life was his family. The girl he married in 1954 was over those 42 years his rock, his love, and his very best friend. His children's memories are of how generous he was with himself and his time, and I dare say they saw their father's human weaknesses and loved him the more. I have never known anyone who enjoyed more what he did for a living than Leslie. When he put his arm around a middle-aged woman on a game show and called her Duck from his Nottingham upbringing and hoped she'd win a fridge freezer, he meant it.
And the winner is Stars in Their Eyes.
Nothing could reflect the affection that all of us had for Leslie more than Matthew Kelly's acceptance of an award he won just 2 weeks after Leslie died.
I'd like to accept this in the memory of Leslie Crowther, because it was Leslie who made this show famous, and he was a fantastic entertainer and he was a great bloke. Thank you very much.
Leslie Crowther's epitaph is that the friend lost by many of those who knew him and loved him was the same man his audience will miss.
A lovely, warm, embracing man who put an arm around people in the profession and in the street.
He was a very special person in my career who helped me at a time when I needed the odd pointer.
I shall always remember him with great affection and a smile.
Oh, Mr. Crowther, our favourite clown. We grew up yelling Crackerjack. We wanted to come on down. Though you had your problems, you faced them like a pro. Oh, Mr. Crowther, we are sad to see you go.
Ten years ago, the BBC broadcast the first Child Watch programme. It made a dramatic impact